difusión,
responsabilidad,
colaboración con la sociedad,
conservación, acceso y difusión,
alfabetización de información,
servicio híbrido, pronto, expedito,
experiencia,
paz,
hospitalidad,
empatía, tanto de bibliotecarios como de autoridades para crear un espacio acogedor,
libertad intelectual, acceso abierto y derechos de autor equilibrados.
Las bibliotecas necesitan dar una alfabetización de información a sus usuarios para poder usar recursos impresos y electrónicos.
En estos tiempos necesitamos bibliotecas ligadas a jardines de paz, que son espacios verdes donde el usuario puede acudir a leer y entonces estar en contacto con la naturaleza es muy beneficioso para todos.
Para mí la biblioteca moderna debería ser la biblioteca como un ágora.
La biblioteca como un espacio de estudio y recreativo.
Difundir la lectura es lo que nos hace falta en las bibliotecas.
Ir a una biblioteca para cubrir ciertas dudas y curiosidades que me dan del día a día, ¿no?
En estos momentos la tecnología ha llegado tanto que tenemos libros electrónicos, pero para mí en particular es mucho mejor tomar el libro, tocarlo, palparlo y disfrutar de una lectura.
Una biblioteca me gustaría que sea un espacio de conocimiento, pero también de una vivencia. Experimentar, leer con un libro en papel es invaluable y quisiera que se conservara.
All right. Well, bienvenue à tout le monde. Welcome, everyone. I'm Leslie Weir, the president of IFLA, and we're thrilled to be here today to talk about being stronger, bolder together. And you may notice that I'm wearing an orange t-shirt pin because in September, Canada recognizes and commemorates Truth and Reconciliation. And the orange t-shirt is to acknowledge the children that were taken away from their families, their communities, and their nations, where they went to residential schools and then they had their language and their culture also taken from them. So it's important that we commemorate the lived experience of those children and recognize that without truth, there can never be reconciliation. So thrilled to be here with you today. And now I've introduced myself. I'll ask my colleague to introduce herself.
Hi, Leslie. Good to be joining you again. And hello, everybody who's joining us. I can see we've got lots of colleagues from North America and China as well. My name's Vicki McDonald, and of course, I'm the past president of IFLA. And terrific to join you today, Leslie, to have another discussion.
And I'm glad to be here with you too, Vicki. And we'd like to thank Martha Elena Ramirez, the National Librarian of Mexico, for that wonderful video. Hopefully you were actually able to hear it, but not to worry because it will be available online after our session. And so you can listen to it again. Today, I think we thought it was very important, Vicki and I, to look at the importance of our presidential themes. And so, Vicki, maybe you would like to start with Stronger Together.
Thanks, Leslie. And as I guess many people joining us today know that each president generally has the opportunity to choose a presidential theme for the term of their presidency, and its purpose is to give inspiration across the 2 years, but also set out the ambition as to what you would like to achieve as well. So I guess in choosing my theme, I reflected on my career, and I guess as a professional, now after working, I guess, all my life in libraries, we are more frequently being asked to articulate and defend our values, and that's to our political masters, our stakeholders, our respective communities, whether it's a city, a university, school administration or corporation. But also at the time that I became president, it was at a time when our federation needed to build trust with our membership. And my mandate, of course, was to work together with the governing board, our members and our volunteers to build a stronger and more resilient federation. So it was within that context that I chose my presidential theme to be Stronger Together. And I think as a profession, one of our great strengths is that we do collaborate and we work together. So the aim was that by working together to find solutions, to advocate for the power of libraries, that we can have stronger outcomes for the communities we serve, our countries, our associations, and IFLA. So stronger together.
Exactly, Vicki. And I think during your leadership, you have certainly made all of us stronger together, and you've supported the global library community in being stronger together. And it's important that we continue to be stronger together and build on the work that you, the governing board, the members, the volunteers, the stakeholders have all done over the past 2 years to make IFLA what it is today. At the same time, we also need to look at what we're experiencing in the world today. And this is a moment where we need to continue to be stronger together, but we also need to be bold. Libraries need to step up. They need to be seen, and they need to be sure that everyone knows the incredible impact that they have on people, on communities, and on society, and how they actually underpin, in many countries, democracy. So it's very important that we step up, continue to be stronger together, but that we be bold over the next 2 years. So Vicki, would you like to outline the key trends that are going to have an impact on our community?
Sure. Thanks, Leslie. So I think just to take a few moments to think about the IFLA Trend Report, which of course was launched about 12 months ago here in Brisbane, where we had people from across the globe join for the IFLA Information Futures Summit. And I think one of the key things that IFLA gives to the profession is a whole set of tools. And this IFLA Trend Report, I think, is one of the most significant tools that we have at the moment. It's really a really impressive document that can be used by libraries across the globe to consider where they want to be in the future and what place libraries want to have in that future. So it was developed by Professor Michael Deswani and Dr. Kim Osman from the Queensland University of Technology, but worked with a number of reference groups and really did some work to ensure that it did have a global context. So you can see on the screen the 7 trends which are outlined in the trend report. What I think is particularly useful about the trend report itself is that it does also identify opportunities and challenges for each. And I think that's important to look at each of those trends in that context as well. So just quickly going through them, trend 1 around knowledge practices are changing. And I think it focuses on a whole range of different questions around the fact that people are seeking to have more non-Western voices in the content that we search, that we actually acknowledge that there is more than the Western voice. And I think when I look at our collections, they've traditionally been written by white males. And so there's a lot more focus on getting diversity of voice in our collections. Also, it picks up the big issues around misinformation and disinformation, how we want to share information as well. Of course, any conversation today includes a discussion around AI and how other technologies are transforming society. And of course, many of us are using generative AI in our work. I know in my library, we're using it to actually make our collections more accessible. So it's about understanding the potential of AI, but also the harms of it as well. Trust is being renegotiated. I think as a profession, we're very fortunate that we are very trusted by our communities, but of course we can't take that for granted. But what we also can see across our communities is that we need to re-establish trust in our government and in our media as well. And there's concerns around the large conglomerates that actually control the news across the globe as well, and the decline of local news. I know in my state, each community used to have its own local newspaper that recorded what was happening in that community. great source of information, and they are disappearing. Very few communities now have their own newspaper. Trend 4 is around skills and abilities are becoming more complex. And of course, we need new skills in this 21st century shortage in key areas as well. Trend 5 is around digital technologies are unevenly distributed, and this picks up particularly the themes around the digital divide, which is actually widening, whereas I guess, a decade ago we would have thought that it would narrow but we still have great gaps in people's access to connectivity, but also the skills to access as well. Trend 6 is around information systems are using more resources. So this picks up the great concerns around climate change, sustainability, the e-waste issues with the technology that we're using, and a focus on achieving a green economy. And the 7th one is particularly, I think it's a little bit different from the rest of the trends around people are seeking community connections, places to share their spaces, but resources. We're seeing a growth in online communities, but of course also that libraries are great community catalysts, places where people can come together. And I know when I wander around my library, I often see people who are there just to be with other people and to be in a space where they can be with other people, but of course come to meet with other people as well. So I think in our conversation today, these 7 trends will come up in our discussion. So I do encourage people to have a look at the report. It's very readable, easy to access. Thanks.
Thank you, Vicki. And I think we all know that we are living in a radically changing and rapidly changing world. We have a very volatile geopolitical situation. We also have, as Vicki's referenced from the trend report, lots of changes happening in technology. We have new skills that people need. We have the impacts of the current flavors of artificial intelligence that are having impacts not only on our libraries, but also on the people that are using our libraries. So this creates new challenges for libraries to step up and to deal with. And so we're having a series of conversations in the transition as we move from Vicki's presidency into mine, and making sure that IFLA continues to build on its strengths and to be able to leverage things like the trend report, which is also going to be influencing the programming that we'll be doing at things like our World Information and Library Congress. So I think we've got exciting times coming up, and our presidential themes really are trying to help us, IFLA, but also libraries globally to be able to respond to these changes and this radically changing world that we're experiencing. So we are going to move from what's prompting these discussions into doing our first poll. And our first poll is asking the question about what are the biggest challenges facing your library today? And there's going to be the Menti poll. You'll be able to provide your thoughts. And as we're waiting to see some of those keywords come up, I think we can say that in Vicki's review of the trend report, I think she touched on quite a few of the challenges that we may find resonate with many of you. And in the session that we had yesterday, we certainly saw concerns raised around the economic situation, around the funding for libraries, around staff and some of the burnout and stresses that they're facing. So it'll be interesting to see what the biggest challenges are for those of you who've joined us today.
I think people just taking a little time to log in. Yeah.
Exactly. For the first poll, it always takes a few minutes for people to get into Menti and think about what they want to share. So here we're seeing human resources, retraining, retooling for new abilities and skills, as you mentioned, Vicki, in the trend report. but also the funding and shrinking library, well, without trying to lose essential services, lack of commitment from stakeholders, of course, artificial intelligence, and the evolution of skills needed to be able to function in an AI-influenced world.
I think you can see there the censorship, the political pressures, the political situation in the US, particularly we have so many people from the US joining us today, but I have no doubt that these topics will come up with our special guest speaker today. They'll be able to give their perspective on these issues as well.
Exactly. So this might be a good time for us to introduce today's guest, and I'm sure many of you know them. So today we have with us Sam Helmick, who of course is the Community and Access Services Coordinator at Iowa City Public Library. Oh, yes, and on the side, they're the president of the American Library Association. Welcome, Sam.
Oh, Vicki and Leslie, it's such a delight to be in community with you and the members of the International Federation Library Association. To be with the world's leaders in this field is just humbling. So thank you so much for inviting me into conversation.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. And we thought it would be interesting for us to talk a little bit about some of the things that came up in the session that we had in Astana, because we had the president's session and we had the president-elect session. And we connected with people who attended, and there were a number of themes that came up. And I think there are a number of themes that you may have brought up in different venues, especially that communities continue to have very diverse expectations of their libraries. And then looking at the impact that we can have, and the fact that sometimes we underestimate ourselves. So I don't know if you want to jump in with any of your thoughts.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate the invitation. I ran on the platform Our Stories Are Worth Sharing because in many cases around the world, I think we are a profession that is so others focused that we forget sometimes to tell our own story and to remind folks to value us. When things work well in society, whether that's a smooth road without potholes or a library, sometimes we overlook that success. And as enablers, as folks who are really supposed to be equipping folks with access to information, which means access to opportunity, we need to make sure that folks are aware of the work we do, not only to resource us with productive policy and robust funding, but then also to alert them that we're there to partner and care about their goals, regardless of what they are in the vulnerable process of learning.
Yes, and in Astana, we heard too that, so resonating here with what you're saying, Sam, that telling our story is in fact an investment. Sometimes libraries are hiding in plain sight, and we need to find ways to be sure that, in fact, we are noticed and people understand that it's not just, well, that we actually have an impact on people's lives.
Right, and to your point about the diverse needs of our populations, it's both beautiful because we reflect the diversity of our communities, but then it's also a challenge, right? So we have bookmobiles and book bikes and pop-ups to meet folks where they organically exist, and we recognize that some of us learn better through hybrid situations or almost exclusively digital. We recognize that we have at least 5 generations that we're serving, and some of them may need help finding housing, a job, medical forms, or a fax machine. And every single time that they're going through that learning vulnerable process, to have somebody who is a dedicated thought partner not only means that the intersectionality of our profession is important for all of these different things that happen in life, but the care and the compassion that library workers have just around the globe, I think, continues to be a through line that is difficult to have in a world of compassion fatigue or in a world where we're facing so many different currents going against stream.
Exactly. And at the same time, we are facing some people feeling that intellectual freedom is a radical proposition. And that, of course, is a key underpinning in terms of libraries and ensuring that people can see themselves reflected in the library collections that they are accessing. And, I think it's very important for us to step up in these difficult times where there are a lot of challenges around intellectual freedom, book banning, and we certainly see trends both in the United States and in Canada We were hearing that it's a little less challenging in places like the UK yesterday, but certainly we are experiencing situations in Canada, especially in our school libraries. And school libraries have always been a place not only to access information, but also a place of safety in our schools quite often. So just don't know. Yeah, jump in.
I 100% agree with you, because when we think about learning being a vulnerable process, what we need to do is grow our muscle of allowing ourselves to fail or to be vulnerable in order to learn. And that is normalized in many cases at a school library before they're introduced to a public or an academic library. So not only are our school librarians and media specialists vanguarding some of the most difficult challenges that our communities are having in terms of good faith and not so good faith conversations, but they're also trying to do that at the same time that we're either raising our next generation what to think or how to think. And I think that that is the question that we're all somewhat reconciling with at a global scale. Are we prepared to understand that reconciling with thoughts and freedoms is messy? Or are we going to try to put a lid on that and see how we can sustain the world of ideas that exist around us, regardless of whether we interact with them or not?
Exactly. Now, Sam, I don't know if you're like me. I don't particularly like watching myself on video, but I would at this point like to introduce Sam's video that they were kind enough to do in advance of this. And so we'll all watch the video. It's a nice short video. Hopefully the audio will be good. And then we'll have an opportunity to reflect on some of the points that Sam has raised in their video.
Hello, I'm Sam Helmick, President-elect of the American Library Association. Around the world, libraries are doing something extraordinary, something that is often overlooked precisely because it works so well. Libraries are among the few institutions that continue to operate with integrity and impact across borders, disciplines, and divides. They protect truth, fuel education, foster innovation, and hold community together. In rural towns and refugee camps, on city corners and university campuses, in prison libraries and mobile book bikes, this work is everywhere. In Kenya, a library teaches digital literacy skills to girls who are the first in their family to go online. In Colombia, libraries staff trek into remote mountains to bring books and solar-powered tablets to communities with no roads. In Ukraine, libraries have become places of shelter, communication, and resistance. And in the United States, libraries offer citizenship classes, job training, and safe spaces for our seniors. And yet, when things function so smoothly, when access is seamless and solutions are quietly delivered, the work often becomes invisible. Success, especially in libraries, hides in plain sight. This is why advocacy is not important. It is essential, because storytelling comes with understanding, and with understanding comes support. Libraries have always known how to build community. Now we must help the world understand that we are a community worth building with. Thank you.
So thank you so much for the video, Sam. And of course, you recorded it prior to Astana. And as you said at the beginning, you were president-elect at the time. So there's certainly a little bit of time passed. That was one of the series of videos that Leslie and I requested leaders across the globe to prepare for us and respond to the question of what does the world need from libraries today? And I can tell you that when we played it in Astana, it was really well received. And I think because you've so succinctly stated some key issues that need to be addressed, but also what we can do. And I just wanted to open the conversation with a quote from David Lanks. So we actually had a discussion with David prior to Astana, and I'm paraphrasing him, and one of his comments, I'm sure you're familiar with it, is libraries once served their communities, now they need to save their communities. Maybe your response to that?
I absolutely agree. When I really think about the seats of power around the world, especially in our capitals, you'll see these beautiful historic buildings. You'll see like our courts, and you'll usually see our libraries, because most of our founders have that in common. They recognize that in order to progress, in order to thrive, we need to have access to robust and broad information. And that access needs to increasingly have diminished barriers so that the people can be informed to govern themselves. And so to that end, I think at this point where we're kind of between two different points, right, Vicki, where it's like we can think of this as like an Orwellian element of censorship happening simultaneously, where like an Ayn Randian almost tsunami of content is happening, which makes it difficult for the average person to understand what is content versus information versus knowledge versus wisdom. Information specialists, library workers are needed more now than probably ever before in human history to navigate that tsunami and to mitigate those abridgments to information and that censorship, because if we don't, our communities will be wandering around in the dark, and libraries are light, and in an information age, we need that light to shine.
So we've been having these conversations. I think this is our fourth online, but of course we did have the discussions in Astana, and we've been asking some of the same questions of our participants. So we might put the poll up, and we can ask our participants to respond to that while we're having a chat. And of course, you know, already in today's conversation, we've already had a lot of discussion around intellectual freedom. And some of the questions we've been asking everybody is, does your policy, in relation to your organisation, do you actually have a policy around intellectual freedom? And does your governing board publicly support intellectual freedom? And so these sessions actually give us an opportunity to get a sense of where libraries are positioned across the world. So these are the first two questions. We'll ask our participants to respond. So it's just a straight no, yes to respond to. So we'll just wait for those to come through. And I guess, you know, I think the situation in Australia is somewhat different to the United States. But I guess how is the ALA supporting its members? And I think, you know, we've seen a lot of work around the campaign. And what are the attributes? I guess we've seen what the campaign is, but what do you think are the attributes that library associations across the globe can actually take from the ALA experience?
I think that's an excellent question. It's about putting the fingerprints and the breath of the community into those policies, because if there's like a default answer, right, or to a reconsideration process or a reconsideration policy or procedure, then that's not actually a process, that's a performance. And so in the Iowa City Public Library, we actually don't have a reconsideration process because we consider that the people check out with their vote. And I don't know about y'all, but in America, they just keep printing these new books every single month, and we don't have extra space to put them. And so the real estate that we have for our shelves is what we have. And if folks are checking it out, that means we get to keep it to continue to circulate. And if folks aren't, then to remain relevant. They've spoken, but that works for Iowa City where it might not work for Peoria or Brisbane or somewhere else. So what really is the through line here is recognizing that this needs to be a process by the people, and that we have to come together and reconcile our values and kind of get messy nose to nose, and what is important for me to have autonomy to choose and what is important for my neighbor, and how libraries sustain that in the most impactful way for the most people possible around the globe. I hope that honors your question.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got the poll there. We can see that, you know, I guess 60% of people have a policy in relation to intellectual freedom, but importantly, we're at 100% around the governing body supporting intellectual freedom. I guess my experience is, you know, when we've had these issues in Queensland, my advice has particularly been to local government is the importance of actually having a content strategy that's publicly available on your website, but importantly has been signed off by the highest level of governance within the organisation that you're operating in, but also that takedown policy. So there is actually a process that you go through where these things are considered. So while we're talking, we might just put up the next two questions as well, is how ready are we to explain why intellectual freedom matters? And again, it's a strongly agree one as well. So I think this is also the crux of the matter, is our ability to actually advocate to who we're reporting to about why intellectual freedom matters, but also to our community as well. And I guess the ALA has done a lot of work there, Sam, in actually giving people the tools to have those discussions, which I think has been able to be used across the globe as well. What do you see as the next big issue, though, that the ALA is going to need to be focused on?
Great question. So I think that at least in the United States, and I imagine just because of world economics, this will trickle out in different ways to different folks, but we have to value our institutions, which means we have to resource them, not only with productive legislation that supports the communities we serve and policies for the communities we serve, but also funding. And so I think whether we become like intelligence engineers with the onset of artificial intelligence, or we just continue to mitigate the digital divide, we need to be investing in our library workers and the institutions that they serve in order to equip our world, not only for national security and international prosperity, but economic and educational development as well as quality of life. So I think that looking at funding and ensuring that folks recognize that this is an investment into the people, this is an investment into our future, and this is an investment into our infrastructure and safety will continue to be a really important conversation, because you and I can't even debate ideas or the books on shelves if we can't afford to put them there.
I think we had Leslie and I had a conversation, it was on Tuesday, my time, with Louis from CILIP. And I guess one of the things that came up in our conversations was the importance of talking to our stakeholders about what are the problems that they have and how can libraries solve those problems. And Louis was actually at the UK Labour Conference, and his commentary was that so many things that we talked about in the trend report were being discussed at that UK Labour Conference, and the opportunity for libraries to jump in and make it quite clear as to how libraries could help solve these problems as well.
And it was great to hear from Louis that CILIP is sort of looking at their planning going forward, and it looks like they're going to coin empower impact as that's what we said too, Sam. Our reaction was the same thing. It was like, whoa, maybe this could be a global approach, not just a UK approach.
I think it dovetails into your strategic impact areas too through IFLA. I'm very in love and enthralled with the idea that it starts with our professional networks, the folks who are the practitioners in the field, and then it has to incorporate our partners, which I know is your second impact area. And if I recall correctly, then we enable and empower people at virtually every level of libraries. And so when I think about the IFLA strategic plan that's in its second year as we move along, and I think about this empowering impact, I agree. I think this dovetails quite nicely.
Well, and you can see how much impact, Sam, you had when we look at the reactions in Astana, where, in your video, you stated our work is invisible sometimes, and it does hide in plain sight. And that came right out through the comments that we had that people made. And I think everyone is agreeing that advocacy is essential. Some people feel quite comfortable doing advocacy. Some people maybe need a little more support in terms of how they can be sure that they get their key ideas across, because sometimes we're so enthusiastic that we give too much information.
I think I'm exclusively guilty of doing that all the time, which is why resources that folks like us and our compatriots are assembling are very useful. As the president of the American Library Association, I find two resources very valuable. UniteAgainstBookBans.org to give you like tips and trips where you have 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days to support intellectual freedom and free people reading freely. I also love Show Up for our libraries, which essentially helps me connect with the areas of my nation or the areas of like my service of influence and sphere of support, and knowing what is taking shape there with the stakeholders and the leaders and how I can act and when I can act, because sometimes we all know this, like threats and opportunities come and then they never really actually formulate. And so understanding what is happening and understanding how to act, but then also understanding the when to act is essential for everybody. And so if you're not big into the advocacy yourself, I think just continuing to make yourself shine, remembering your elevator pitch about your own position that you're enthusiastic about, and then just connecting people with those resources so that they can use their own voices to support their own community's libraries will be continually essential.
I think in your video you referred to the importance of storytelling, and I think that's really the essence of it, is being able to tell the story so that people can relate to the narrative that you're sharing, and it actually has those touch points for everybody. So as I said, your video was short and snappy, but ever so powerful. Yeah. So we actually have another video to share and to continue the conversation. And this time we're slipping across to Sweden, and we invited Sylvia and Hagen, who's the Secretary General of the Swedish Library Association, to respond to our provocation of what does the world today need from its library. So over to Sylvia.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Ernhagen, and I'm the Secretary General of the Swedish Library Association. So, dear colleagues, we often describe libraries as safe and neutral spaces, and that is something to be very proud of. In a world where debates often become polarized, where opinions harden and divisions grow, libraries remain places where everyone is welcome, where ideas can coexist, and where learning happens without judgment. But neutrality doesn't mean invisibility. The world around us is changing rapidly. People are searching for connection, trust, and belonging. And the library, your library, can be that place. A place where people meet across differences. A place where curiosity is allowed and sometimes even disagreement, in a respectful way, of course. We do not need to take sides, but we do need to open the door to many sides. The role of libraries is not to tell people what to think, but to help them find the tools to think for themselves. And to do that, we must dare to reflect the world as it is, complex, diverse, and sometimes uncomfortable. This includes standing up for freedom of expression. Libraries have always been defenders of intellectual freedom, places where people can encounter different opinions, explore controversial ideas, and make up their own minds. Promoting freedom of expression doesn't mean endorsing every view, but it does mean protecting the right to access ideas, discuss them, and understand the world in more than one way. And this has never been more relevant. In IFLA's trend report from 2024, Trend 7 highlights that people are seeking community connections, real connections. Across borders, across generations, people are looking for places to belong. And while technology offers speed and reach, it often lacks warmth and trust. So that's where we come in. Libraries are one of the few places left where people can gather without pressure to perform or to buy something. And at the same time, libraries are places to seek trustworthy information, take part in cultural events, and find social community. But how often do we truly show the impact of the work that we do? It is time we take more space in the public conversation. It's time we make our presence more visible. The world should know what happens in libraries, not just books, but connections, support, and trust. Because libraries do not just serve democracy, they help shape it. In a time of information overload, libraries remain one of the few places where reflection still is possible. And that makes us not only relevant, but essential. And we see this every day in small, quiet moments, when someone learns to send their first email, when a teenager discovers a book that finally speaks to them, or when a refugee finds a space that feels safe. These aren't dramatic events, but they are very meaningful. They are moments of empowerment and a way of making the world safer. It is all bits and pieces of building democracy, and they happen every day in libraries. What the world needs from its libraries is not that we change who we are, but that we step up and show what we are doing. We need to be more fully into our role. We are not here to tell people what is wrong or right, or to own the conversation. We are here to hold the space for it and make sure people knows about it. And that, I believe, is one of the most powerful things we can do. Thank you.
So thank you very much to Sylvia for those words. And I think there's some really powerful comments in that video as well. So Sam, hopefully you're still there. And I suspect this is maybe the first time you've seen that video, but I guess you can see the same messages coming through. But I think it's interested in your response. A couple of things that Sylvia said there around libraries helping to shape democracy, but also those moments of empowerment and picking up, the fact that, the small things, the isolated things that people can be doing that actually do have an important role in actually making our world safer, but also empowering people. And she gave the example of sending the first email. But I think something else that she picked up also that relates to what you said is making our presence more visible. So interested in your responses to Sylvia's comments?
Absolutely agree, 100%. I had the joy of meeting Sylvia at the Intellectual Freedom Summit in Brisbane, and I just remember thinking what a remarkable advocate and intellectual for our profession. And I would absolutely agree that often the elements of democracy building happen in a library in very passive ways that don't even involve the staff, like the use of meeting rooms for community groups, or the use of outreach to actually amplify, platform, and support community-driven festivals and initiatives, the use of our public spaces for art programs and lectures. And I just think about how we edify and inform and uplift each other, and neighbors become collaborators in thought and experience and transformative outcomes simply because the library is equipped with space and staff and resources that inform their goals. So I absolutely agree with that. And the way that I think we become more visible is by kind of noting that. I have never run across somebody in the last 5 years and not said, did the library have everything you were looking for today? Right? And I always thank folks for coming in, especially when we're competing with a nice day in the state of Iowa, which is very rare, but it happens sometimes. And I think if we continue to add, we're really glad you were there for the library today as well. And just sort of start planting that seed. Even if it's, did the library have everything you wanted today? It's one of two outcomes. Either now you feel secure in asking for what you needed when we opened the door, or you say, yeah, my library did have everything I needed today. Maybe I should resource it and support it. Does that honor your question, Vicki?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I think one of the other challenges is letting people know what more is actually available from the library. People can come in with just thinking they're going to do this, but not have an understanding of the total breadth of what's on offer. So I might just flag with Stephen, I think just still keeping an eye on our time, that maybe we skip the next poll and just go straight to the next video, Leslie, because I think you're also going to enjoy our next video, Sam, as well, which is from Sherpong Ning from National Library of Singapore, National Library Board there. So I'm sure you met Sherpong in Brisbane as well. And of course, we had the news this week that Sherpong's term at National Library Board of Singapore is ending. And he's made such a strong contribution in the last 6 years to libraries. And it's been such a privilege to have him at a number of our library gatherings across the last 6 years. But again, we asked Sherpong the question, what does the world today need from its libraries?
Hello, fellow librarians and friends from around the world. We stand at a crossroads. We live in an increasingly polarized world with widespread misinformation and falsehoods. Reading and content consumption patterns are also fast changing with shortened attention spans. Our communities need us more than ever because knowledge and skills can help uplift them and enable them to master this changing world without being polarized into extremities. Libraries and librarians are uniquely positioned to inspire people to read, learn, and discover. And technology has expanded the means for us to do so. As we gather for this year's World Library and Information Congress, or WILIC, we should seize the opportunity to move forward together. But we cannot do so by standing still. The world and our patrons need us to change with them. They need libraries that are accessible, innovative, and responsive. Like many of you, the National Library and Archives Board of Singapore, which oversees the National Library, the National Archives, and a nationwide network of public libraries, rose to the occasion during the global pandemic, and we transformed significantly in order to better serve our patrons. We built on these gains and continued to develop new products and services. These include ramping up our digital offerings, rolling out pop-up thematic libraries in shopping malls, and offering book delivery services directly to homes. To keep pace with changes in the world, we will have to be experimental. We should build on why people love libraries and use that as a springboard for innovation. One key strength of libraries and librarians is our ability to connect. More so than ever, we will need to tap on this strength to work with like-minded partners to seek breakthroughs. Collectively, we can avail new ways to read, learn, and discover to our patrons. Partnerships are also critical to enable us to assist those who may be struggling to keep up with the many disruptions. Libraries should continue to serve and provide access to all in our communities. This is part of our equalizer role. One of Singapore's largest public libraries, the Punggol Regional Library, opened in 2023 in Northeast Singapore. Co-created with the disability community, it pioneers services such as assistive technology devices and dedicated rooms for patrons who need a private and calming space, alongside an accessible collection of specially curated resources serving both persons with disabilities and their caregivers. Our memory institutions, the National Library and National Archives, are similarly being transformed through partnerships. We work closely with many partners and donors to collect, preserve, and archive materials, including those on social media channels. But equally, we're tapping on technology to not only digitize our collections, but also to make them more accessible and engaging for all. Generative AI has proven to be a game changer, especially in presenting historical materials to new audiences. We successfully piloted its use for a chat service powered by generative AI, drawing on our collection, including oral history interviews. We will continue to press ahead with using these emerging technologies, while stepping up efforts to educate the public about the limitations and risks involved. We are celebrating NLB's 30th anniversary this year, and it marks the start of a new chapter for us. What does the world today need from its libraries? It's a great question the WILIC has put to us to consider. As we look to the future, we must embrace change with determination and purpose, transforming our libraries to meet the evolving needs of our communities. Today's world needs libraries that spark innovation, inspire discovery, and open doors to endless possibilities for everyone. We must be more than repositories of knowledge. We must be portals to opportunity and bridges to the future. Together, let us build libraries that not just serve our communities, but transform them. Thank you.
So, Sam, this being perhaps the first time that you've heard Chair Pong on this video, I think we're all very, very struck by the many points that he raises, but the provocative closing in terms of that we need libraries to spark innovation, inspire discovery, and open doors to endless possibilities for everyone. And I mean, of course, it is the 30th anniversary of the National Library Board of Singapore, and they, I think, have sort of set the bar for innovation in library services. So what are your reactions to some of the thoughts that Chair Pong?
So many wonderful thoughts that if I had to find a through line, I think it's the power of discovery. We're all being formed into algorithms. We're all being pushed into silos. And he talks about distraction, and then he talks about the fact that we need to be portals of opportunity, and without privacy, confidentiality, also the curation and the context that comes with our collections, whether they're materials or experiences, you cannot have that power of discovery, and that is one of the most magical elements to learning. I'm really just jazzed about that video, because it's like a lecture in 7 minutes on like some of the highest elements of our profession.
Exactly, and he also took the sort of the through line of David Lanke's, as we were discussing earlier, in terms of not just, save communities, but also help them transform themselves. Pretty exciting.
It's important to tell our stories, but we have to create environments in which they write their own, because then they'll see the value, right?
Exactly, exactly. Well, I think we are drawing to a close in terms of today's session, but we have covered such a wide range of from just the importance of the profile of libraries, the need for impact, how we can do that through advocacy, and that storytelling is critical to us being able to do that. And by doing that, we can empower libraries as well as empowering people. And we can really make the staff and the spaces, they can actually, like, they can sing in support of society. We know that we often are playing a role in terms of providing safe and neutral spaces, and that we can help shape democracy where we're in democratic countries, or perhaps otherwise as well. But we also need to be creative and innovative in doing that. And I think that the IFLA Trend Report and the IFLA strategy, as Sam highlighted, really does give us two key tools to support IFLA and the global library community in doing that to move forward. And I'd just like to give Sam and Vicki a chance for one last comment before we close the session. So Vicki, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to our guest Sam for a quick remark.
Well, firstly, thanks, Sam, for participating in today's discussion, but also the provision of the video, which we were able to show in Astana. I think I've really enjoyed these sessions, the 4 online sessions, as well as the 2 in Astana. And I think what's particularly profound about them is that they're so inspirational and energizing, is to hear from different leaders' perspectives, what's the same, but what's different. But I think the big message that comes through in all of them is the influence that libraries can have, the positive influence and the impact. And I think those words have come up is so much in our discussions as well. So I think, it's really exciting to listen to other people. It gives you that it does energize you and gives you lots of new ideas, but also positivity. And we had a discussion where I worked yesterday around the whole theme of optimism. And I think that's what comes from these sessions as well. So thank you very much, Sam, and thanks, Leslie.
I just want to thank you all for your leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
Over to you, Sam.
Oh, sorry, Leslie. I wanted to just end with gratitude. Your leadership is wonderful, and I think it's going to spark innovation, creativity, and just advocacy and determination and storytelling for all of our members. And I look forward to what the future holds.
Well, and I think the opportunity for us to all work together, and I know that your leadership also sparks inspiration for many of us in IFLA and around the world, and certainly just a little north of you in Canada. So we'd like to thank you for being with us today, but we'd also like to thank you for everything that you do to contribute to the library community in the United States, but also globally. And I think that we have many, many impactful leaders. We've seen them through these videos, which will all now be available on the IFLA website. There will be more information about the sessions that we've had. We'll be providing the full deck of the recorded presentations, and so people can use them. All of our presenters have given permission for people to use them in their libraries, working with staff, and I'm sure any of our video stars would be happy for people to also approach them with any questions and for further conversations. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and especially thank Sam and Vicki for being here with us today and animating a fabulous conversation around the importance of libraries, the importance of us empowering impact of libraries, thanks to Louis. And you can find out more with our QR code. You can go to the IFLA website, and you can have an opportunity to watch today's videos, but also all the videos that we've shown throughout the series. And so a huge thank you to our participants as well for taking the time to be with us today, and for being huge supporters of libraries in each and every one of your communities, and making sure that libraries have impact globally.
Thank you.